They say professors don't cry. That's bullshit. Mine did right after I told him I loved him. I still remember the way his hands trembled as he adjusted his glasses, pretending the tears weren't real. We were in his office, the one that always smelled faintly of cedarwood and stale coffee. Papers covered every inch of the desk, but none of that mattered the moment our eyes met. "Eli, stop," he whispered, voice breaking. "You don't know what you're saying." But I did. I'd known it for months, ever since the first night he stayed up grading my research proposal until 2 a.m., offering me cocoa instead of criticism. That night, we'd sat too close, laughed too softly, and when I leaned in, he didn't move away. His name was Dr. Mason Hayes, 31, brilliant, kind, and lonely in a way I couldn't ignore. The kind of man who could talk about quantum ethics and yet couldn't tell someone he needed to be loved. And somehow I broke him. It's been 6 months since Mason disappeared. 6 months since I found the letter on his desk. The one that simply said, "I'm sorry. I can't let this destroy you too." No one knew where he went. His colleagues assumed he transferred. Students whispered scandals, and I just kept searching. Until now. The cabin was exactly as we left it. Hidden in the woods outside Portland, our research retreat. Though we both knew it was more than that. It was where we'd laughed, fought, kissed, and dreamed. Where he once traced constellations on my skin, calling me his North Star. I parked the car, heart pounding. The air smelled like pine and rain. And for the first time in months, I saw smoke rising from the chimney. He was here. When I knocked, the door didn't open immediately. I heard shuffling inside, the sound of a chair scraping. Then his voice, soft and careful. "Who is it?" "Mason. It's me." Silence. Then the click of the lock. He stood there, smaller than I remembered, his hair longer, his eyes red-rimmed and tired. But what froze me wasn't his physique, was the gentle curve beneath his sweater. My breath caught. "Jesus, Mason," I whispered. "You're..." He nodded, tears forming instantly. 3 months. The world tilted. I felt like I was underwater, every sound muffled except the pounding of my heart. He turned away, gripping the doorframe as if bracing for impact. "I didn't want you to find out," he said, voice trembling. "You had your whole life ahead of you, Eli. Grad school, your future. Not this." I stepped forward, shaking. "You think I care about that? You think I wouldn't..." "Stop," he snapped, spinning around. "You don't understand what it's like. The university, the gossip, the shame. I couldn't do that to you. I couldn't do that to us." His words broke something inside me. "Us," I repeated, almost laughing. "There was no us after you left." He looked down, one hand resting protectively over his stomach. "There still is," he said quietly. "You just didn't know." We sat by the fireplace after that, not talking at first, just breathing the same air again. He made chamomile, the same kind we used to share during late-night grading sessions. I watched the steam rise between us, carrying all the things we couldn't say. He finally spoke. "I thought I was protecting you. By running," I asked bitterly. "By giving you a chance to forget me." I laughed short and sharp. "You really think I could?" Mason looked at me then, truly looked like he was seeing me for the first time in months. His eyes softened. "I hoped you would." The fire crackled. Outside, rain tapped gently against the windows. "I was terrified," he confessed. "When I found out I was pregnant, I didn't know what to do. It shouldn't even be possible, but the doctor said, well, rare things happen. I wanted to call you so badly, but I imagined your face when I told you, and I couldn't bear to see you trapped." I reached across the small table, taking his hand. His fingers were cold, trembling slightly. "You weren't protecting me," I said quietly. "You were punishing both of us." His eyes filled again. "Maybe I was." The firelight danced over his face, softening the pain into something almost sacred. I wanted to pull him into my arms, to tell him none of it mattered, the rules, the gossip, the impossibility of it all. But before I could, he whispered, "Do you want to feel him?" For a second, I didn't understand. Then I saw his hand move to his belly. My throat closed. Slowly, I reached out, placing my palm where his rested. Warmth, life, and in that fragile heartbeat, every wound between us began to heal. The fire burned lower as the night deepened. Outside, the rain had turned to a soft drizzle, tapping like quiet applause against the cabin roof. Mason had fallen asleep on the couch, his hands still resting on his stomach, his breathing even and fragile. I sat nearby, unable to look away from him. The man who once lectured about moral philosophy now looked like something sacred, like forgiveness itself. I wanted to protect him, no matter what the world said. But the world doesn't stay away for long. The next morning, I woke to the sound of a car engine outside. Mason froze instantly. Through the window, I saw a black sedan parked in the mud. Two figures stepped out, university officials, judging by their coats and the sharpness of their movements. "Stay here," I told him. He shook his head, panic flashing in his eyes. "Eli, please, don't make this worse." I kissed his forehead gently. "They can't take you away from me again." I stepped out into the rain, my clothes instantly soaked. The older Mandine porter looked at me with cold disapproval. "Mr. Brooks, I see you found him. What do you want?" I demanded. "To bring Dr. Hayes back where he belongs," the dean said flatly. "He's still under university contract. His disappearance has caused quite the scandal. We're prepared to overlook certain indiscretions, provided he returns quietly." "Indiscretions," I repeated, laughing bitterly. "You mean love?" The dean's expression didn't change. "You're young, Mr. Brooks. Don't ruin your career over a mistake." Behind me, the cabin door creaked. Mason's voice, steady but tired, cut through the rain. "I'm not going anywhere with you." The dean turned, frowning. "Dr. Hayes, no," Mason said again, his voice stronger this time. "You don't get to call this a mistake. You don't get to erase what this means." He stepped forward, one hand protectively over his belly. "I've spent my life teaching others to think for themselves, to choose truth no matter the cost. Well, he looked at me, eyes shimmering, "this is my truth." The silence that followed was deafening. The dean's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. The rain kept falling, as if the world itself was holding its breath. Finally, he turned away. "You'll regret this, Mason," he muttered. Then they were gone. When their car disappeared down the muddy road, Mason collapsed into me. I held him, both of us shaking, half from cold, half from relief. "They'll talk," he whispered. "Let them," I said. "Let them talk until they forget why." He laughed softly against my chest, a sound that felt like sunrise. "You really think love can survive that?" I kissed his hair. "It already has." The days that followed were quiet, almost dreamlike. We fixed the roof, restocked the pantry, rebuilt a life one small thing at a time. Mason began writing again this time, not papers or essays, but stories. He said it helped him breathe. I spent hours reading beside him, listening to the wind outside and the soft rhythm of his pencil scratching against paper. Sometimes he'd stop, rest his hand on his belly, and smile at me in that way that made everything else disappear. "Do you think he'll have your eyes or mine?" he asked one night. "Yours," I said instantly. "They hold galaxies." He rolled his eyes, laughing. "Flattery will get you everywhere, Eli." "Good," I said, leaning over to kiss him. "Because I'm not planning to go anywhere else." For the first time in months, the fear faded. There was only us two men who'd broken every rule, standing in a world that suddenly felt big enough to hold us. Winter came early that year. The snow made everything quiet, soft, forgiving. One night, I woke to find Mason standing by the window, bathed in silver moonlight, his hand pressed against the glass. "Can't sleep?" I asked, wrapping my arms around him from behind. He shook his head slowly. "I was thinking about that day at the university," he murmured. "When you first said you loved me, I was so scared. I thought love was a weakness. And now," he turned to me, eyes shining, "now I think it's the only thing that ever made me brave." We stayed like that for a long time, watching the snow fall. And when he finally whispered, I think it's time. I realized he didn't mean for sleep. The birth was quiet, almost unreal. The world outside the cabin disappeared, leaving only our breath, our hands, and the sound of new life. When the baby's first cry filled the air, Mason wept openly. I cut the cord with trembling hands. Laughter and tears tangled together. Mason looked exhausted but radiant, a small smile trembling on his lips as he held our child for the first time. "Hey!" he whispered softly, voice full of wonder. "Welcome home." I knelt beside them, my heart so full it hurt. "He's perfect," I said. Mason looked at me with tired, shining eyes. "We're not supposed to exist, you know? You and me. This." I smiled. "Then let's keep breaking the rules." He laughed weakly. "You always were my worst student. And your best mistake," I added. Mason leaned his forehead against mine. "No," he whispered. "My best choice." Spring arrived with the sound of rain again, and the cabin filled with light. Mason's books returned to the shelves. My coat hung beside his. We lived quietly, tenderly, choosing each other every day. Sometimes we'd sit on the porch, the baby asleep between us, the world finally at peace. Mason would rest his head on my shoulder and say, "Do you ever wonder what people would think if they saw us now?" And I'd always answer the same, "Let them think whatever they want. We're still here." Because in a world that told us love like ours was impossible, we made it real. We built a home out of whispers and promises. We chose forgiveness over fear, and we stayed together. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe to stay updated with the latest videos.